In 1999, a 40-year-old sheriff from a small Virginia coastal town vanished without a trace during his routine night patrol. Everyone assumed he had simply abandoned his duties and run away until 11 years later. In March 2010, a fisherman spots something shocking at the base of a remote cliff. His rusted patrol car emerging from the waves with evidence inside that exposed a horrifying truth about that night. The morning fog hung thick over Cape Charles, Virginia, that March day in 2010, clinging to the coastal cliffs like a shroud. Deputy Alan Keller had just poured his second cup of coffee at home when his radio crackled to life. Unit 12. Unit 12. This is dispatch. We have a 10 to 54 at Mariner's Drop. Fisherman reports a possible police vehicle at the base of the cliff, requesting immediate response. Alan's hand froze mid-reach for his toast. Mariner's Drop, the treacherous stretch of the Delmarva Peninsula where the Atlantic Ocean met sheer rock faces. He'd driven that route countless times in his 20 years on the force. But something about this call made his chest tighten. Dispatch, this is Unit 12. Keller responding. ETA, 10 minutes. He grabbed his jacket and headed for his patrol car, the coffee forgotten on the counter. As he pulled out of his driveway, his radio came alive again. Alan, it's Sarah. Detective Sarah Jenkins's voice was tight with urgency. I'm already en route. Helicopter's been dispatched. Meet me at the northern observation point. Copy that. What are we looking at? Fisherman says it's definitely one of ours. Old model, heavily damaged. Sarah paused. Dispatch ran a preliminary check on missing patrol vehicles from the area. There's only one unaccounted for in the past 20 years. Alan's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. He didn't need her to say the name. Sheriff Michael Donovan. His mentor, his friend. Missing for 11 years, his patrol car vanished without a trace on a routine night shift in March of 1999. The drive to Mariner's Drop took exactly 9 minutes and 37 seconds. Alan knew because he counted every one of them, his mind racing through memories he'd tried to bury. Donovan in his crisp brown uniform, his sheriff's star gleaming as he'd clapped Alan on the shoulder that last evening. The warm smile when he'd promised to be careful. The empty office that had waited for his return. The observation point was already crowded with patrol cars when he arrived, their red and blue lights painting the fog in surreal colors. Yellow tape cordoned off the cliff edge where a cluster of deputies peered down at the rocky shore below. Alan spotted Sarah immediately, her dark hair pulled back in its characteristic bun, her detective shield prominent on her belt. Alan, she turned as he approached, her brown eyes full of sympathy. You should prepare yourself. The coroner's been called. He nodded curtly and pushed through to the cliff edge. Below, barely visible through the morning haze, lay the twisted remains of a patrol car. Even from this height, he could see the rust that had eaten through the metal like cancer, the way the roof had caved in from years of pressure and pounding waves. The distinctive whoop-whoop of helicopter rotors announced the arrival of the rescue team. Alan watched as the Coast Guard chopper descended, its crew preparing the heavy cables that would lift the wreck. The fisherman who'd made the discovery stood nearby, a weathered man in his 60s, wearing faded overalls and rubber boots. You found it? Alan asked. The man nodded, clearly shaken. Been fishing these waters for 30 years. That car wasn't there last week. I can tell you that. The nor'easter 2 days ago must have dislodged it from wherever it was hiding. When the sun hit that chrome bumper this morning, he shook his head. I knew right away it wasn't right. You did good calling it in, Sarah said, joining them. Can you tell us exactly what you saw? As the fisherman recounted his discovery, Alan watched the helicopter crew work. They rappelled down the cliff face with practiced efficiency, attaching heavy cables to the vehicle's frame. The process was painstaking. One wrong move could send evidence tumbling into the Atlantic. Lifting now, the radio announced. The gathered officers fell silent as the cables went taut. Slowly, impossibly, the rusted hulk began to rise. Water poured from its broken windows like tears, and chunks of rust and debris rained down on the rocks below. Alan found himself holding his breath as the car cleared the cliff edge and was guided to a flat area they'd cleared. Up close, the devastation was even worse. The patrol car, a 1998 Ford Crown Victoria, the same model Donovan had driven, was barely recognizable. The ocean had not been kind. Rust had eaten through entire sections of the body, and barnacles crusted the undercarriage like armor. The forensics team moved in immediately, photographing every angle before beginning their examination. Alan forced himself to stand back to let them work, even as every instinct screamed at him to tear the doors open and search for answers. License plates still partially readable. One of the techs called out, "Running it now." Sarah's hand found Alan's shoulder. "You don't have to be here for this." "Yes, I do." The tech with the laptop looked up, his face grave. "Bien much. This is Sheriff Michael Donovan's patrol vehicle." The words hit Alan like a physical blow, even though he'd known, had felt in his bones from the moment he'd heard the call. 11 years of not knowing, of wondering if he'd simply left the job, left everything behind. Now here was proof that something terrible had happened that night. Opening the driver's door, the lead forensic tech announced. He pulled, and the door came away entirely, its hinges rusted through. The interior was a cave of shadows and decay. The seats rotted down to springs, the dashboard a mass of corrosion. "No remains visible," the tech reported, and Alan released a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Whether it was relief or disappointment, he couldn't say. The search continued methodically. Personal effects emerged like artifact from a tomb. A flashlight, its batteries long since leaked and corroded, a citation book, the pages fused into a solid mass. And then from beneath the driver's seat, a brass shell casing. .40 caliber, the tech said, holding it up. Same as department issue. Blood. Another tech called from the rear of the vehicle. Degraded, but definitely blood under the back seat. And he popped the trunk, playing his flashlight over the rusted interior. Significant traces in the trunk. A new voice cut through the scene. "What the hell is going on here?" Captain Robert Miller, the department supervisor, strode through the crime scene tape like he owned it, which Alan reflected, he essentially did. Miller had been Donovan's second-in-command back in '99. Now in his late 50s, he'd grown thick around the middle, but still carried himself with the authority of a man used to being obeyed. "Robert," Sarah said, "we've confirmed it's Michael Donovan's vehicle." Miller's face went through several expressions before settling on official concern. "Christ, after all this time." He looked at Alan. "You shouldn't be here. I'm Phoenix." Blood and brass. The forensic lead summarized. No dash cam recovered, probably destroyed by salt water, but this is definitely a crime scene. Miller rubbed his jaw. "Now, let's not jump to conclusions. That blood could be anyone's. For all we know, Mike might have." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "He might have been involved in something that went wrong, shot someone, panicked, ditched the car." "That's not Mike," Alan said flatly. "He wouldn't. 11 years is a long time, Alan. People aren't always who we think they are." Miller's tone was sympathetic but firm. "We investigate this properly. No assumptions." Sarah stepped in before Alan could respond. "We'll need DNA testing on the blood samples. It's advanced technology, expensive, but..." "Do it," Miller said. "This is a potential homicide. We spare no expense." He looked around the scene. "The media will be all over this. We need a statement." As if summoned by his words, the first news van appeared on the horizon, followed quickly by two more. Within minutes, reporters were setting up just beyond the police tape, their cameras focused on the rusted patrol car. Alan found himself in front of the cameras before he'd fully processed what was happening. The reporters thrust microphones at him like weapons. "Deputy Keller, how does it feel to finally have answers about your friend's disappearance? Is it true Sheriff Donovan was under investigation before he vanished? Do you believe he was murdered?" Alan straightened his shoulders and looked directly into the nearest camera. Sheriff Michael Donovan was a dedicated member of this department. He'd just been re-elected when he disappeared in 1999. He was hardworking, honest, and committed to serving this community. "We will investigate this discovery thoroughly and professionally, and we will find out what happened to him." Nature has finally surrendered this evidence to us, and we won't waste the opportunity. More questions flew at him, but Sarah gently guided him away from the cameras. Behind them, the forensics team continued their methodical work, each piece of evidence carefully cataloged and preserved. "You did good," Sarah said as they reached their vehicles. "Go home, Alan. Take some time." Miller appeared at Alan's elbow. "She's right. You're too close to this. Take a few days. Let us handle the investigation. I can work this case." "No, you can't." Miller's tone broke no argument. "You're emotionally involved. Your judgment's compromised. That's not an insult. It's a fact." Sarah nodded reluctantly. "I'll handle it personally. Work with the team. I'll keep you updated every step of the way, Alan. You can trust me." Alan looked between them, then back at the rusted shell of Donovan's patrol car. After 11 years, answers were finally within reach. But they were right. He was too close, too raw. "I have copies of the original case files at home," he said finally. "I'll review them, see if there's anything we missed." "That's fine," Miller said, visibly relieved. "Just don't go playing detective on your own." Sarah walked Alan to his patrol car. "I'll head back to the station. Pull all the records, the logbooks from '99, duty rosters, everything. We'll figure this out." "Someone killed him, Sarah." The words came out rough. All these years, people saying he ran off, abandoned his duty, but someone killed him. We don't know that yet. Blood in the trunk, bullet casing. What else could it be? Sarah's expression was sympathetic but professional. "We follow the evidence. That's all we can do." Alan climbed into his patrol car and started the engine. In his rearview mirror, he could see the forensics team still working, the rusted remains of the past finally dragged into the light. He put the car in gear and headed home, his mind already racing through the dusty files waiting in his office, searching for the clue they'd missed 11 years ago. Alan's house sat quiet in the midday sun, a modest two-story in a Cape Charles neighborhood where deputies and fishermen lived side by side. He pushed through the front door and headed straight for his home office, not bothering to remove his jacket. The box sat on the top shelf of his closet, exactly where he'd placed it 5 years ago during his last review. Brown cardboard, M. Donovan, 1999, written in black marker across the side. He pulled it down and sat on the office floor, spreading the contents around him like pieces of a puzzle he'd never been able to solve. Donovan's photograph stared up at him from his personnel file. Sandy hair, blue eyes bright with pride, the sheriff's star prominent on his uniform. He'd been 40 when this was taken, just 2 weeks before he vanished. He grabbed the logbook copies first, running his finger down the entries from March 5th, 1999. Donovan's handwriting neat and precise. 2,000 hours, beginning patrol, Sector 4. Then 15 minutes later, 2015, routine traffic stop, Route 13 mile marker 95. Warning issued. Nothing after that. No distress call, no report of suspicious activity, no request for backup, just silence. Alan shuffled through the witness statements, all 3 of them. As part of that night, Deputy Emily Reed had given a brief account. Last saw Sheriff Donovan at 2,000 hours when he departed for solo patrol. He seemed in good spirits, mentioned wanting to finish early to catch the late movie on TV. The other 2 statements came from civilians who'd seen a patrol car that night, but couldn't confirm it was Donovan's. Minimal. Frustratingly minimal. He leaned back against the wall, staring at the papers scattered across his carpet. Donovan wouldn't have just driven his patrol car off Mariner's Drop. The logistics alone made it impossible. How would he have gotten away? Someone else had to be involved. His eyes fell on the duty roster. Emily Reed had been his partner, but there on the bottom of the logbook page was another name, Deputy Mark Vincent, night shift supervisor. He'd signed off on the log entries, confirming their accuracy. Alan grabbed his phone and dialed Sarah's cell. She answered on the second ring. "Alan, I'm almost back at the station. Robert's already there." The rest of the team still processing the scene. "I need to ask you about Mark Vincent. He signed the logbook the night Mike disappeared. Vincent, he transferred to Accomack County about 6 years ago. What about him? I want to talk to him. Can you pull his current contact when you get to the station?" "Sure. You coming in?" "On my way." Alan gathered the files back into their box and stood. The house felt too quiet, too full of ghosts. He needed to move, to do something. Instead of driving directly to the station, he found himself turning onto Route 13, heading north toward Donovan's old patrol sector. 20 minutes later, he pulled over at mile marker 95, the location of his last reported traffic stop. The area hadn't changed much in 11 years. Loblolly pines and coastal grasses bent in the eternal wind. The Chesapeake Bay, a gray-blue expanse to the west. To the east, he could see the old industrial fishing piers at Onancock Creek, their corrugated metal buildings rusted and weather-beaten. They'd searched there in '99, found nothing. Why had Mike been out here alone? Standard procedure called for pairs after dark, especially in isolated areas. He was about to return his car when he heard the rumble of another patrol vehicle approaching. The black and white cruiser slowed as it passed, then pulled over. The driver's window rolled down, and Alan found himself looking at a face he hadn't seen in years. Alan Keller. That you? Mark Vincent had aged well, his hair gray now, but his face still lean and alert. He wore the Accomack County Sheriff's uniform with the easy confidence of a veteran officer. Mark, this is a coincidence. I was just thinking about you. Yeah, heard about this morning. They really found Mike's car. Mark's expression was sympathetic but guarded. At Mariner's Drop, I was just checking his old patrol route. Mark nodded slowly. Terrible thing after all this time. He glanced at his watch. Listen, I'd love to catch up, but I'm running late for my shift. Actually, I wanted to ask you about the logbook from that night. You signed off on it. Something flickered in Mark's eyes. That was 11 years ago, Alan. But yeah, I remember signing it. Everything was in order, just like always. He shifted the car into gear. Tell you what, let's grab coffee sometime soon. Talk about old times. I'm patrolling the Chincoteague area today, near the National Wildlife Refuge. Give me a call at the department. I'll do that. Mark gave a brief wave and pulled away, his patrol car disappearing around the bend. Back in his car, he turned on the radio as he headed to the station. A news report was playing a replay of his interview from that morning. Sheriff Michael Donovan was a dedicated member of this department. He was hardworking, honest, and committed to serving this community. His own words echoed back at him, and suddenly a thought struck cold. Mike had been a reformer, ambitious in a department dominated by old-school deputies. Alan had worked there long enough to know how brutal the politics could be, how some officers resented change, resented a leader who rose too fast. He tried to push the thought away. These were his brothers in blue, people he'd trusted with his life. But the questions persisted. Why had Mike been alone that night? Who had assigned him to such an isolated patrol route? Alan pressed harder on the accelerator. He needed answers, and he was going to find them. The Northampton County Sheriff's Office parking lot was half empty when Alan pulled in. The afternoon shift change still an hour away. He was reaching for his door handle when movement caught his eye. Robert Miller, pacing along the side of the building, cell phone pressed to his ear. Even from 50 feet away, Alan could see the tension in his captain's body language. Robert walked back and forth in short, agitated steps, his free hand gesturing sharply. Then his voice rose, carrying across the parking lot. Car came up. Your job. Move now. Alan paused, hand still on the door handle. Robert's tone was urgent, almost desperate. He climbed out of his patrol car quietly, closing the door with a soft click. Robert must have sensed the movement because he spun around, his eyes widening when he saw Alan. The surprise on his face quickly shifted to something else. Uncertainty? Fear. He immediately lowered his voice, mumbling something into the phone before ending the call. Alan, Robert called out, forcing a smile. What are you doing here? Thought I told you to take some time. Alan walked over, trying to keep his expression neutral. Couldn't stay away. Was that about Mike's case? What? Oh, the call. Robert fumbled his phone into his pocket. Yeah, it was the state evidence yard. They're giving me grief about moving the car. You know how it is. That vehicle's been in salt water for 11 years. It's an environmental hazard now. DEQ regulations and all that. They want it moved to their specialized facility ASAP. But the transport company's dragging their feet. He laughed, but it sounded forced. Had to light a fire under them. Your job. I said. Move it now before we get the state inspectors breathing down our necks. It made sense. Alan had dealt with evidence transport before, knew how complicated it could get with hazardous materials. Bureaucracy never rests. Tell me about it. Robert wiped his forehead despite the cool March air. Come on, let's get inside. They walked through the station's front entrance together, the familiar sounds and smells of the bullpen washing over Alan. Phones ringing, coffee brewing, the subtle undercurrent of controlled chaos that defined police work. He spotted Sarah immediately, huddled with two forensic technicians near the evidence processing room. She looked up as he approached, but held up a finger. Wait, degraded samples are always problematic, one of the techs was saying. Modern DNA testing is good, but it still requires quality genetic material. What we pull from that car? He shook his head. 11 years underwater, contaminated with salt, rust, marine bacteria. We're looking at weeks minimum, possibly months. There's no way to expedite it? Sarah asked. Not without compromising the results. The blood's there, we confirm that much. But whether we can extract enough clean DNA to make a match. The tech shrugged. Alan felt his hope deflating. Without DNA confirmation, they couldn't even prove Mike had been in the car when it went over. What about the bullet casing? Sarah pressed. The second tech flipped through his notes. That's more definitive. It's a .40 caliber. Matches the department-issued ammunition from 1999. Same grain weight, same manufacturer. If Sheriff Donovan fired his weapon that night, this could be from it. Alan closed his eyes, the implications washing over him. Mike's gun, Mike's blood, or someone else's. The uncertainty was maddening. He opened his eyes to see Robert disappearing down the corridor toward his office, his gait slightly unsteady. Sarah finally broke away from the forensics team. Sorry about that. You okay? I need to talk to Robert about Mark Vincent. I ran into him out on Route 13, right at Mike's old patrol route. Sarah's eyebrows rose. That's quite a coincidence. My thought exactly. Alan touched her shoulder. I'm going to catch Robert. We'll talk after. I'll be in my office. Got something to show you. Alan made his way down the corridor and knocked on Robert's door. It's Alan. Come in. He pushed the door open to find Robert hastily closing his desk drawer, tossing back what looked like pills with a glass of water. Blood pressure medication, Robert explained without being asked. This case is... He gestured vaguely. You shouldn't be here, Alan. I meant what I said about taking time off. I tried, couldn't do it. Alan noticed how Robert slumped in his chair, his face flushed. I need to ask you about Mark Vincent. Robert's expression tightened. What about him? I ran into him today at Mike's old patrol route. He was the night supervisor who signed off on the logbook when Mike disappeared. So, someone had to sign it. Robert, something's been bothering me. If Mike was attacked that night, he would have called it in. He was too good a cop not to. But there's nothing after 8:15. Robert massaged his temples with both hands. That's exactly why we always thought he'd just left. No distress call, no reports of an attack, no witnesses saying they saw anything suspicious. But that doesn't fit with what we found today. Blood, bullet casing. You're wasting time and resources. Robert's voice turned sharp. Mark Vincent is a good cop. You want to start suspecting your brothers in blue based on what? A signature on an 11-year-old logbook? I'm not suspecting anyone. I just want a complete picture. Robert stood abruptly, then grabbed the edge of his desk as he swayed. I can't. I need to check on the car transport, make sure it gets to the evidence yard properly. He headed for the door, but stumbled slightly. Alan caught his arm, alarmed by how clammy Robert's skin felt through his shirt sleeve. Jesus, Robert, you sure you're okay? Maybe you need some coffee, or I'm fiending. Robert pulled away, attempting a laugh. Just this damn diet my wife's got me on. Low blood sugar and stress don't mix. He straightened his tie with shaking hands. We need concrete leads, Alan, not wild theories about fellow officers. Alan watched him leave, noticing how Robert forgot to lock his office door and nearly walked into the glass entrance to the bullpen. Something was definitely wrong. But before he could pursue it, Sarah appeared at his elbow. My office now. Once inside, Sarah closed the door and pulled a document from her desk. I was going through the archives, Looking at other cases Mike was working in 99. Found this misfiled. Alan took the paper. A witness statement, but something was off. No signature, no official stamp. Just typed text describing a patrol car and a white van on a rural road near the coast the night Mike disappeared. Where was this? In a completely unrelated case file. Residential burglary from 3 months later. Sarah pulled out the actual burglary file. See? Nothing to do with Mike or that night. Alan studied both documents. Why hide it instead of destroying it? Sarah lowered her voice. Maybe someone wanted insurance, a backup story in case they needed it. Or maybe they just forgot they'd stashed it. Either way, someone in this department knew more than they said. Alan looked at the name on the witness statement. Brenda Evans. Wait, that name. I already pulled the official file. Sarah produced another folder. There's a second statement from Brenda Evans. Signed, stamped, completely official. Alan read it quickly. In this version, Brenda claimed she'd seen nothing unusual that night. The same witness, 2 completely different stories. She's got an address and phone number listed. Alan checked his watch. Still local, over in the Exmoor neighborhood. Sarah grabbed her jacket. I'm coming with you. Something tells me Ms. Evans has some explaining to do. They headed for the door, Alan's mind racing. New evidence, hidden documents, and conflicting statements. After 11 years, the carefully constructed wall of silence around Mike's disappearance was finally beginning to crack. Sarah's unmarked sedan smelled like coffee and old case files as they pulled out of the station parking lot. Alan had the witness statement in his hand, dialing the phone number listed for Brenda Evans. Come on, pick up, he muttered, listening to the endless ringing. After the 4th attempt, he snapped the phone shut. Line's dead, either disconnected or she's not answering. The address is only 15 minutes away, Sarah said, turning on a Langford highway. Exmoor was a quiet town, working class. The houses grew smaller as they drove, neat post-war bungalows with tiny yards and American trucks in the driveways. Sarah slowed as they turned onto a side street, checking house numbers. Should be on the right, Alan said. 2847, 2851. There. Wait. Sarah hit the brakes gently. Look, Robert Miller's department-issued sedan sat in front of a yellow house with peeling paint and an overgrown lawn. Robert himself stood on the front porch, and he wasn't alone. A woman in her early 40s faced him, her body language defensive, arms crossed over her chest. Sarah pulled to the curb, 3 houses down, killing the engine. Through the windshield, they watched Robert jab his finger at the woman, his face stern. Even from this distance, they could see the tension in his shoulders, the aggressive lean of his body. What the hell is he doing here? Alan whispered. The woman, presumably Brenda, shook her head repeatedly, backing toward her door. Robert reached into his jacket and pulled out what looked like a thick envelope. He pressed it into her hands, leaning close to say something that made her flinch. That doesn't look like an official interview, Sarah observed. Robert turned abruptly and strode back to his car. They ducked down instinctively as he drove past, though his attention seemed focused straight ahead. Once his taillights disappeared around the corner, they watched Brenda retreat into her house, clutching the envelope. Well, Sarah said, this just got interesting. They approached the house carefully, noting the mechanic's tools scattered on the porch, the oil stains on the driveway. Alan knocked firmly. The door opened immediately, Brenda's face already twisted in annoyance. What else do you people want? She stopped short, seeing 2 unfamiliar faces. Alan noticed her eyes were red-rimmed, her hands shaking slightly. Ms. Evans, I'm Deputy Alan Keller. This is Detective Sarah Jenkins. We're with the Northampton County Sheriff's Office. Brenda's expression shifted from anger to confusion to something like fear. What's this about? We'd like to ask you some questions about a statement you gave in 1999, Alan said. May we come in? I don't have any business with you. She started to close the door. Sarah stepped forward. We saw you talking with our captain just now, Robert Miller. We're investigating the same case, and we really need to speak with you. Brenda's face went pale. She glanced between them, then down at the documents in Alan's hand. I don't understand what you mean. Alan held up both witness statements, the hidden one and the official one. We need you to explain these." For a long moment, Brenda stared at the papers. Then her shoulders sagged in defeat. She rolled her eyes and stepped back. "Fine, come in. But this is the last time I'm talking about this." The living room was small but tidy, decorated with photographs of better times. Brenda gestured to a worn couch and took the recliner across from them, the envelope from Robert still clutched in her lap. "I don't know what you want me to say," she began. "The truth would be nice," Sarah said gently. "We know you gave 2 different statements about the night Sheriff Michael Donovan disappeared. We need to know what you really saw." Brenda laughed bitterly. "The truth. You want the truth after 11 years. She rubbed her face with both hands. "I'm so tired. Tired of carrying this burden, these lies, this guilt." Alan leaned forward. "Then tell us. Help us understand." Brenda stared at the envelope in her lap for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I was driving to work that night, March 5th, 1999. I was a park ranger at Kiptopaki State Park, working the evening shift. It was about 8:30 when I passed a side road and saw a male officer, a sheriff, alone, pulling over a white van." She paused, lost in the memory. "I didn't think much of it. Cops pull people over all the time, right? So I kept driving. Can you describe the van?" Sarah asked, taking notes. "White, like I said, older model, maybe early 90s, no windows in the back, the kind contractors use." Brenda shifted in her chair. "Anyway, I got to work, did my rounds, but it was a slow night, and I was bored, so around 10 p.m. I called my husband, asked him to come keep me company." She had the grace to look embarrassed. We met up in the park. You know how it is. Young, married, looking for some excitement. The park's huge. Lots of isolated spots in the woods. We found a quiet place, and..." She waved her hand. "You get the idea. What happened then?" Alan pressed. "We heard something, a noise like a shout, maybe a scream. Hard to tell with the wind and the trees. My husband wanted to investigate, but the park is massive. In the dark, sounds echo weird. We walked around for maybe 15 minutes, but couldn't find anything." "What time was this?" "Maybe 11:30, midnight. I wasn't exactly checking my watch." Brenda's voice turned bitter. "When I headed back to my post around 12:30, I saw that same white van driving out of the park. Same one from the traffic stop. I was sure of it." Sarah and Alan exchanged glances. "You're certain it was the same van?" "Positive. It had a dent in the rear panel, right side, shaped like a crescent moon." "And you reported this?" Brenda's face crumpled. "I tried. The next day, when I heard about the missing sheriff last seen on Route 13, I went to the station, gave my statement. But your captain, Miller, he took over." She grabbed the envelope and thrust it at them. "Take it. I'm done with this. All of it." Alan opened the envelope. Inside was $3,000 in worn bills. "He paid you to change your statement," Alan said. It wasn't a question. Brenda nodded miserably. Said my first statement about the white van was unclear, confusing. Said I needed to simplify it. Just say I didn't see anything. Made it sound like he was doing me a favor, helping me avoid complications. But that wasn't all, was it? Sarah's voice was gentle but firm. "No." Tears rolled down Brenda's face. A week later, my supervisor at the park found out about me and my husband meeting there. Someone made an anonymous complaint. I was fired for inappropriate conduct. Couldn't get another ranger job anywhere. Miller made sure of that. "So you kept quiet," Alan said. "What choice did I have? My father was sick, the medical bills." She gestured around the modest room. "I took over my dad's mechanic shop, barely scraped by. And every few months, Miller would show up with another envelope. 'For your troubles,' he'd say, 'for your continued discretion.'" Sarah stood. "Ms. Evans, we need you to come to the station. Make an official statement. Help us build a case against Robert." Brenda shook her head violently. No way. You saw him here today. He knows something's happening. I may sound selfish, but I need to protect myself and my family. My father's still sick, still needs care, and my husband, he moved to a different state, blaming me for the money. Miller could destroy what little we have left. But your testimony won't be enough." Brenda's voice was firm. "You know it won't. He's a respected captain, 20-plus years on the force. I am nobody. A disgraced park ranger who got caught with her husband on a job. Who's going to believe me? Alan wanted to argue, but he understood her fear. He'd seen how the system could crush those without power or connections. Find more evidence, Brenda said. Build a case he can't wiggle out of. Then I'll testify, but not before. Back in the car, Alan slumped in his seat. She's right. Her word against Roberts won't be enough. But now we know there's something to find, Sarah said, starting the engine. A white van in the park that night. Robert covering it up. This is bigger than just Mike. Alan suddenly straightened. Mark Vincent. He said he was patrolling the Chincoteague area today near the National Wildlife Refuge. Kiptopeki isn't on the way to Chincoteague from Accomack, but it's where Brenda worked. That can't be a coincidence. Sarah's eyes gleamed with determination. Then let's go see what Deputy Vincent is really up to. Kiptopeki State Park stretched before them, a vast expanse of coastal forest and dunes that met the Chesapeake Bay. Sarah turned into the main parking area, the afternoon sun filtering through the pine trees that lined the entrance. There, Alan said sharply. Robert's car. The captain's sedan sat near the ranger station, and beside it, the black and white patrol car Alan had seen that morning. He checked the plate number to be sure. That's Mark Vincent's unit. Same one from this morning. Sarah scanned the lot. We need cover. Don't want them spotting us. She maneuvered the sedan into a spot between a van and a pickup truck, partially hidden by overhanging branches. From here, they had a clear view of both vehicles while remaining concealed. Alan grabbed a park map from the visitor box as they exited the car. The trail system sprawled across thousands of acres. Baywoods Trail, Bald Eagle Bluff Trail, Southern Beach Trail. Finding anything in this wilderness would be like searching for a specific grain of sand on a beach. We can't just wander around hoping to, Alan began, but Sarah pressed a finger to her lips. She pointed through the trees. Two figures emerged from a trailhead 50 yards away. Robert Miller, still in his uniform pants and a polo shirt despite the outdoor setting, and Mark Vincent in his Accomack County uniform. Mark carried a shovel and a heavy gear bag. Robert clutched a large black plastic bag, the industrial kind used for construction waste. They moved with purpose toward their vehicles. Robert's face was flushed with exertion and annoyance, though he kept his voice low. Alan and Sarah crept closer, using the tree line for cover. Told you this was unnecessary, Mark was saying. Robert popped his trunk and carefully placed the plastic bag inside a wooden crate. Unnecessary? Did you hear Keller on the news this morning? They found the car, Mark. The goddamn car came up. Mark loaded his shovel and gear bag into his patrol vehicle. So what? It's been 11 years. There's nothing. There's blood. Robert's voice was tight with controlled panic. Bullet casings. And this new DNA testing they've got now. You have any idea how accurate it is? The body's been in the ground for 11 years, Robert. It's probably just bones by now. No one's going to find it on that old trail. It's a hiking-only trail 2 miles into the wilderness. Who's going to look there? Robert moved the crate from his trunk to Mark's, grunting with the effort. Alan noticed how he handled it carefully despite his agitation. Are you stupid? Robert cuffed the back of Mark's head. If they confirm that blood in the car is Mike's, what do you think happens next? They'll want the body. They'll start questioning everyone again. That Evans woman, the park rangers we've been paying to keep quiet. One of them talks, and we're finished. Mark rubbed his head, scowling. Fine, but where am I supposed to take it? Can't exactly drive around with human remains in my trunk. Somewhere secure. Somewhere I don't even know about. So if things go south, I can pass a polygraph. Mark thought for a moment. What about the place near those people? You know, our business partners. If anyone ever gets close, suspicion falls on them. Not us. For the first time, Robert almost smiled. Finally, you're thinking. Just get it done. And Mark, make sure no one sees you. They slammed their trunks closed. Robert climbed into his sedan while Mark settled into his patrol car. Alan and Sarah retreated deeper into the trees as both vehicles started up. Robert's car turned left at the park exit, heading back toward town. Mark's patrol car went right, heading north along the coastal route. They jogged back to their car, Sarah sliding behind the wheel before Alan had fully closed his door. She waited until Mark had a 30-second lead before pulling out. "Thank God we didn't have to hike that trail," Sarah muttered, keeping Mark's patrol car in sight while maintaining distance. 2 miles into wilderness terrain. "We'd have been searching for hours." "That has to be Mike in that bag," Alan said, his voice thick with emotion. 11 years he's been up there alone. "We don't know that for certain," Sarah cautioned, though her tone suggested she believed it too. "But whatever's in that crate, Robert and Mark are desperate to hide it." They followed Mark north along Route 13, past the turnoff from Mariner's Drop, where this had all begun just hours ago. Alan watched the patrol car ahead, his mind racing. Those people, Mark had said, business partners. What kind of business did a corrupt deputy have with partners worth protecting? After 30 minutes of tailing Mark's patrol car north, Sarah observed, "We're heading into Accomack territory." Alan leaned forward, spotting a familiar industrial complex in the distance. "There, the Wallops Island Flight Facilities Support Complex." He's turning in. The NASA Support Complex was a sprawling area of concrete buildings and antennae surrounded by chain-link fence and warning signs. Mark's patrol car didn't head for the main entrance, but circled around to a service road at the back of the facility. Sarah pulled off the main road, finding cover behind a cluster of storage units that gave them a view of Mark's movements. Through the fence, they watched him park in a secluded spot near a heavily vegetated area, untended marshland that bordered the facility's rear perimeter. "He's moving," Alan said. Mark emerged from his vehicle and popped the trunk. He hefted the wooden crate containing the plastic bag, grabbed his shovel, and headed into the tall grass. He moved with purpose but kept checking over his shoulder. "Let's go," Sarah whispered. "Stay low." They slipped from their car and approached the fence line, using the industrial equipment and overgrown bushes for cover. Mark hadn't ventured far into the vegetation, maybe 30 yards from his vehicle. They could see him clearly as he began to dig. The shovel bit into the sandy earth with rhythmic chunks. Mark worked efficiently, years of physical labor evident in his movements. Within 10 minutes, he'd excavated a hole roughly 3 feet deep and 4 feet long. Alan's stomach clenched as Mark opened the crate and upended the black plastic bag into the hole. The contents spilled out, clearly human remains, though degraded by years of burial. Bones, tattered fabric, and what might have been hair tumbled into the fresh grave. Then Mark did something that made Alan's blood boil. He reached into the hole and plucked something out, a small bone, maybe a finger, and slipped it into his pocket. A trophy. Mark began filling in the hole, tamping down the earth with his boots. Within minutes, he dispersed the extra soil and covered the site with grass and debris. To a casual observer, the ground appeared undisturbed. They retreated to their car as Mark loaded his equipment back into the trunk. Alan reached for the radio, but Sarah caught his hand. "Wait," she said. "Remember what he told Robert? Something about putting it near those people so suspicion would fall on them. Let's see where he goes." Alan nodded reluctantly. They needed the whole picture, not just Mark with a shovel. Mark brushed dirt from his uniform and climbed back into his patrol car. But instead of leaving the facility, he drove through an internal access gate, showing his credentials to the bored-looking security guard. "He's got access," Sarah muttered. "How long has this been going on?" They watched through binoculars as Mark's vehicle stopped outside what appeared to be an abandoned warehouse at the far end of the complex. The building looked like it hadn't seen maintenance in years. Rust-stained walls, broken windows, patched with plywood. Mark disappeared inside. 5 minutes passed. Then he emerged carrying a rectangular package wrapped in brown paper. The size and shape immediately familiar to any narcotics officer. "Son of a bitch," Alan breathed. "Drugs?" "He's picking up drugs." Sarah was already on the radio, keeping her voice low. "Dispatch, this is Detective Jenkins. Need you to run a quiet check on the Wallops Island Support Complex, specifically any abandoned warehouses. Any reports, complaints, unusual activity." While they waited for dispatch to respond, movement at the warehouse caught their attention. 2 men had emerged, and between them were 2 young women, teenagers by the look of them, wearing cheap dresses and looking terrified. The men pushed the girls toward Mark, who grabbed them roughly by the arms and marched them to his patrol car, shoving them into the back seat. "That's it," Alan said. "We need backup now." Sarah was already on the radio. "Dispatch, we have a 10 to 99 at Wallops Island Support Complex. Officer involved in possible human trafficking and narcotics. Request immediate tactical team response. Suspect is Deputy Mark Vincent, Accomack County. We also need units to secure Captain Robert Miller at Northampton Station. He's involved. Copy that, Detective." Units responding. ETA, 5 minutes. They maintained visual on Mark, who is now engaged in animated conversation with the men outside the warehouse. The casual nature of the interaction suggested this wasn't their first transaction. Then a white van appeared from deeper within the facility. Old, nondescript, with no rear windows. Alan's pulse quickened, just like the one Brenda Evans had described. Mark returned to his patrol car and positioned it in front of the van, clearly preparing to escort it out of the facility, using a police vehicle to protect a criminal operation. The audacity of it made Alan's hands clench into fists. "They've been doing this for years," Sarah said quietly. "Look how routine it all is. No nervousness, no rush, just business as usual." The sound of approaching sirens shattered the afternoon quiet. Multiple patrol cars and a SWAT van converged on the facility's main gate. The security guard, faced with overwhelming police presence, had no choice but to open the barrier. Mark and the van driver realized their predicament simultaneously. Both vehicles lurched forward, trying to reach a secondary exit. Sarah threw their car into gear, joining the pursuit with the other units. The van driver lost his nerve first, slamming on the brakes and throwing his hands up. Mark tried to bluff his way through, stopping his patrol car and climbing out with affected nonchalance. "What's going on here?" he called out, trying for authoritative confusion. "I didn't receive any notification about an operation. I was just checking this warehouse as part of my patrol." Sarah was already out of the car, handcuffs in hand. "Save it, Mark. We saw everything." "This is a misunderstanding," Mark protested as Sarah cuffed him. "Those girls in my car, they were buying drugs. See?" He gestured desperately at the brown package on his front seat. "I was bringing them in." Alan leaned in close. "You're quite the storyteller, Mark. Too bad we watched you bury human remains 30 minutes ago. Probably Mike's. Then waltz in here for your drug pickup and probably your monthly bonus of traffic girls." Mark's face went white. "I don't know what you're talking about. This is all a mistake." "Only mistake was yours," Sarah said, reading him his rights while guiding him to a patrol car. Meanwhile, the tactical team had breached the warehouse. Alan and Sarah approached as officers emerged with handcuffed suspects, hard-looking men who radiated violence, even in custody. Inside, the warehouse revealed its true purpose immediately. Stairs led down to a basement level that reeked of chemicals. The meth lab was extensive: glass apparatus, heating elements, tanks of precursor chemicals, professional grade, capable of producing massive quantities. In a side room, they found more victims. Women ranging from teenagers to their 30s, all showing signs of captivity and abuse. A female officer was speaking softly to them in Spanish, assuring them of their safety. One of the older women, braver than the rest, spoke up. "We work the lab, packaging, cleaning. But the young ones," she gestured at the teenagers. "They keep them for new customers, new partners. A monthly reward for the police who help them." Alan had to step outside, fighting nausea. This went beyond corruption. This was evil, systematic, and protected by the very people sworn to serve. Medical teams arrived, gently escorting the victims to ambulances. The arrest transport began filling with suspects. Evidence teams swarmed the lab, documenting everything. "We need to recover those remains," Alan told Sarah, "before anyone else gets involved." They found another officer to accompany them and drove back to where Mark had dug his hasty grave. The disturbed earth was still obvious to trained eyes. Using Mark's abandoned shovel, they carefully excavated the remains, transferring them to an evidence bag with the reverence they deserved. "Mike," Alan whispered. After 11 years, they'd found him. Back at their car, with the evidence secured, Alan remembered one more crucial piece. "We need Brenda Evans. Her testimony ties this all together. Sarah was already dialing. When Brenda answered, Sarah's voice was firm but kind. "Ms. Evans, it's Detective Jenkins. We've arrested Mark Vincent and have evidence on Captain Robert Miller. Multiple officers involved. It's time to fulfill your promise." There was a long pause. Then, thank God. Yes, I'll come. We're sending a unit to escort you safely to the station," Sarah assured her. Alan grabbed the radio. "Dispatch. Need a unit to 2851 Exmoor Avenue. Protective escort for a witness." The support facility looked like a war zone now. Police vehicles everywhere. Suspects in custody, victims receiving care. They'd uncovered something monstrous hiding in plain sight, protected by badges and the public trust. "Let's get back," Sarah said. "Time to have a real conversation with Robert Miller." The Northampton County Sheriff's Office had transformed into controlled chaos. Suspects from the Wallops facility filed through booking, their wrists cuffed, their faces sullen. Officers moved with practiced efficiency, processing evidence, filing reports, coordinating with multiple agencies. The magnitude of what they'd uncovered was still sinking in. Alan and Sarah submitted their evidence to the property clerk. The bag of remains, Mark's shovel, photographs from both scenes. Each item was logged meticulously, the chain of custody preserved. Interrogation room, too. A uniformed officer told them, "Miller's already there. The sheriff wants you both on this." Through the one-way mirror, Robert Miller looked smaller than Alan had ever seen him. The confident captain was gone, replaced by a sweating, handcuffed man whose eyes darted nervously around the room. Sarah took the lead, settling into the chair across from Robert, while Alan sat quietly beside her, studying the man he'd trusted for 2 decades. "This interview is being recorded," Sarah began, activating the tape. "Present are Detective Sarah Jenkins, Deputy Alan Keller, and Captain Robert Miller." "Captain Miller, you've been read your rights." "This is a mistake," Robert said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Whatever you think you saw." "What we saw," Sarah interrupted calmly, "was you delivering a payoff to Brenda Evans this afternoon. We saw you and Mark Vincent moving human remains from Kiptopeki State Park. We followed Mark to a meth lab where he collected drugs and trafficked women. Ms. Evans has given a full statement about how you paid her to change her testimony 11 years ago." Robert's face went through several shades of pale. "You followed us from the park to the facility," Alan confirmed. "We saw everything, Robert." The silence stretched between them. Robert's breathing grew labored, his shirt darkening with sweat. "What happened in 1999? Alan asked quietly. "What happened to my friend?" Robert stared at the table for a long moment. When he finally looked up, something had broken in his eyes. "Fine," he said. "You know everything anyway. I'm tired of this. 11 years of looking over my shoulder, waiting for this day." He took a shuddering breath. "My best chance now is a plea deal, so here it is. All of it." Sarah leaned forward, pen poised over a notepad. "Mike pulled over a van that night, March 5th, 1999. Routine traffic stop near the old industrial piers at Onancock Creek, just outside Accomack. He didn't know it, but that van was carrying a meth shipment from the Wallops facility to the piers for distribution." Alan's hands clenched under the table, but he remained silent. The driver panicked. Low-level runner, probably high on his own product. He shot him through the passenger window, hit him in the shoulder, spun him around. He was wounded, bleeding, but not dead. "And they called you?" Sarah said. It wasn't a question. Robert nodded miserably. "I was there inside, man. Had been for 2 years already. They paid well, and I told myself I was just looking the other way, not really involved. But when they called that night..." He rubbed his face. "I sent Mark, told him to handle it before backup could respond to his last position." "Mark killed him," Alan said, his voice rough. "No." Robert met his eyes. "I did. Mark wanted to call an ambulance, try to save him. But he'd seen the van, seen the driver. He could identify them, testify. So His voice cracked. "I finished what the runner started. Used Mike's own weapon. That's why the casing matched department ammunition." The interrogation room fell silent except for the hum of the recording equipment. "We destroyed his radio and dash cam." Robert continued. each word seeming to age him. Buried his body in Kiptopeki State Park on the Bald Eagle Bluff Trail, 2 miles and where no one goes. The cartel guys took his patrol car to Mariner's Drop, pushed it off into the ocean. The nor'easter that week helped hide it. The blood in the trunk, Sarah asked. For moving him. We wrapped him in plastic, but he shrugged helplessly. Alan found his voice. All these years, the monthly payments weren't just money. No, Robert admitted. Drugs for some of the guys who were using. Girls for entertainment. The operation grew over the years. More deputies got involved. Names? Sarah demanded. Robert laughed bitterly. You want names? This station would run out of staff if I gave you all of them. As the names poured out, Alan felt sick. The corruption ran deeper than he'd imagined. No wonder Mike's disappearance had never been solved. Half the department had been actively covering it up. I need some air, Alan said abruptly, standing. Sarah glanced at him with concern, but nodded. Take your time. We're not done here. Alan stumbled into the corridor, his legs unsteady. The weight of 11 years of lies, of seeing that empty office, not knowing if his friend had left or died, crashed down at once. Deputy Keller. He looked up to see Brenda Evans sitting on a bench near the interview rooms, her hands folded nervously in her lap. MS. Evans, he moved to sit beside her. Thank you for coming. I gave my statement, she said quietly. Told them everything about that night, about Robert's threats and bribes. All of it. She turned to him with tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry. It's not fair what happened to you, to the sheriff, to anyone. I know I deserve to be prosecuted. I took their money, kept their secrets. Alan studied her weathered face, seeing the weight she'd carried. You were intimidated into silence. You were threatened. The prosecutor will take that into consideration. But you came forward when it mattered, Alan interrupted gently. Your testimony helped us solve this. That counts for something. Maybe immunity, maybe a plea deal. But either way, he met her eyes. I'm grateful. Mike can finally rest because you found your courage. They shared a brief, silent nod. Two people bound by tragedy, finding a moment of solace. Deputy Keller, a forensic technician, appeared in the doorway. Could you come with me? We need you to identify something. Alan excused himself and followed the tech to the evidence room. Tables lined the walls, covered with tagged items from the day's raids. The tech led him to a smaller table where the remains had been carefully arranged. We'll send everything for DNA testing to the state lab, the tech explained, pulling on latex gloves. But we found this with the remains. He held up a small evidence bag. Inside was a St. Michael pendant on a thick chain, tarnished but intact. Alan recognized it immediately, the one Mike's mother had given him when he first made sheriff. With trembling hands, Alan took the bag. Through the plastic, he could feel the weight of the metal, the familiar shape. He turned it over, and there it was, engraved on the back in simple script. MD 1995. The grief came then, 11 years of it pouring out in the sterile evidence room. The pendant made it real in a way even finding the body hadn't. This was Mike's, worn against his skin, cherished. He hadn't left. He'd been stolen. The tech stepped back respectfully, giving him space to mourn. After several minutes, Alan wiped his eyes and returned to the evidence table. Among the bones, he noticed one was tagged separately. We found that in Mark Vincent's pocket, the tech explained. A finger bone. He took it as some kind of trophy. Sick bastards, Alan muttered. These men had worn badges, taken oaths. They betrayed everything law enforcement stood for. He touched the bag containing the bones gently. Finally found you, Mike. You can rest now. Deputy, the tech said softly. What you did today, you saved those women at the facility. They're at Riverside Shore Memorial now, getting treatment. Their lives matter too. Alan nodded, drawing strength from that truth. Mike was gone, but others had been saved. He confirmed the evidence for DNA testing and walked back to the corridor. Sarah was just emerging from the interrogation room, looking drained but satisfied. He gave us everything, she said. Names, dates, routes, contacts. This is going to tear the department apart. Good, Alan said firmly. It needs to be torn apart, rebuilt clean. They stood together in the corridor, watching as more suspects were processed, as internal affairs officers arrived to begin their investigation, as the machinery of justice ground forward. "This is going to be a long battle," Sarah observed. "Trials, investigations, rooting out every corrupt deputy Robert named. The department won't be the same." "It shouldn't be the same," Alan replied. "Not after this." Sarah checked her watch. "The victims from the facility, we should go see them too. Take their statements, but also," she paused, "let them know they're safe now, that people care." Alan nodded. "Let's go." As they headed for the exit, Alan reflected on what they'd uncovered. Evil had flourished in their midst because good people had stayed silent, because those entrusted with power had abused it for personal gain. Mike had died simply for doing his job, for pulling over the wrong vehicle at the wrong time. But truth, like his patrol car, had a way of surfacing eventually. The nor'easter that had dislodged the evidence was more than meteorological. It was the storm of conscience in people like Brenda, the storm of determination in officers like Sarah, the storm of justice that demanded accounting for sins long hidden. The badge meant something. It had to mean something. And for Mike, for the women they'd saved today, for the community that trusted them, they would make sure it did again.